All right, hop into the mystery machine, everyone. We're gonna go solve some capers around the Scooby-Doo cinematic universe on this Scooby-Doo Scooby Snacks and Chats rewatch podcast as part of the Brazilian Dragon Podcast Network. And I am someone who will never show up to a vampire wedding. It is Felipe, and I'm not alone. I am joined by someone who loves a good gumbo. It is Matt P. Matt, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. I'm here, in my lovely house, not random Louisiana somewhere. So, hi.
Yes. Well, this is your Brazilian Dragon podcast debut. So tell us a little bit about yourselves, Matt. Who are you? What is your history with the Scooby Doo cinematic universe? And anything else you want to share at this time?
It is, yes. I'm very happy to be on the pod. My name is Matt. I'm a writer, podcaster, content creator in the general way, as one
All
does
around
on the
King.
internet. Hush. Um, yeah. Um, as for my history with Scooby Doo, love it. Love Scooby Doo in pretty much every form. I wouldn't say I have like a particular strong connection to any one variation. I just love it. It's a good time. It's always a good time. Probably my
Well,
strongest connection to any form of Scooby Doo is those fruit snacks. From
ooh, that's a throwback. We have to do like a taste testing episode of the podcast for Scooby Snacks and Chats. Do
yes,
you think those still exist?
maybe, but probably not in the way that they once
Probably
did.
like I think they were revamped for Scoop, but no, I want the vintage ones from childhood
They
with
probably
like
have
the
actual fruit
purple.
in them
Wait, do
now.
you think you could name who each character had as their color?
This is mean something. I know Scooby was blue.
Scooby was blue.
It
Do you
was
remember who was purple?
Well, hold on, and also it was great because like everything was like the gummy color that was
Yeah.
like kind of a little see through. But Scooby, no, that was bright, bright sky blue, and it was great. I don't know what flavor or fruit it was supposed to be, but it was so good. Okay, Scooby was blue.
My God, this is a throwback. Like just looking at the packaging, it brings back like so many memories.
I want to say Shaggy was green. He's always
Shaggy
green.
was purple.
Shaggy was the purple one. Okay.
The green one was the Mystery Machine.
Oh, right.
Fred, Fred was yellow.
Mm.
Daphne was red, and Velma was orange.
I remember Velma being orange, but I guess I had that.
What
I
a
don't know.
throwback! That like was a sense memory that you unlocked, Matt. Now I have a couple of preview questions that I want to get to know. Who is your favorite Scooby-Doo character from any Scooby-Doo property? It can be one of the core five. It can be Scrappy. It can be one miscellaneous random character that you like cannot help but root for, even though they were in one movie.
Has the person ever on this podcast said their favorite is Scrappy Doo?
Yes, last week.
Whoo! Okay. Fighting
Well,
my
I don't think Scrappy was Alex's favorite, but he is a Scrappy loyalist.
Scrappy Stan. Uh, um, gosh. I love that core five. I'll probably say Daphne.
Yes, and this was a good movie for you then.
Love a
Daphne
queen.
had her. This was like a good Daphne movie,
She
I
had
would
her
say.
moments. She had
Like
some
especially
style.
compared to last week. Last week we didn't have a ton of Daphne. This week was a lot more Daphne. Last week was more of a Shaggy Velma movie. This one was a Daphne movie. Any favorite standout episodes or movies in the animated universe?
Ooh. Oh man, I should have done my homework on this.
It's fine.
Oh
Like
gosh, I'm trying to remember which one. We had so much of my like old cartoon history and memories come from just like random DVDs that my aunt had collected and were at my grandma's house. Going over there. We had one that was just all the like it was like the Boomerang
ooh,
collection. So
yeah.
just random, like, okay, here's one episode of like 8 different Hanna-Barbera cartoons. So
We
like my
love
sense
that.
categories. Like it's
like a
the
party
one,
pack.
yeah, it's like the one Yogi Bear, the one Jetsons, the one Huckleberry Hound, Top Cat. And I'm trying to remember. There was a Scooby Doo. I want to say it was the Creeper episode, but
That's a
that
good
may
one.
just be the one I have. I think that's the one I have seen the most.
Keepers, it's the Creeper.
That might be, yeah. Like I think that's actually one of the straight up first
Yeah,
episode.
no, this is a very memorable villain. It's the third episode of the second season of Scooby-Doo Where Are You that aired on September 26th in 1970.
Super. Yes.
My God, these are throwbacks. Now I kind of want to just watch them all, like instead of podcasts. But no, we got things to do.
Right.
And then
I will say they do hold up.
yeah,
When I was the Halloween, I was back home during COVID. It was just like, well, it's Halloween. We're not doing anything.
let's
So we
watch
just,
movies.
exactly. And we wound up just turning on the TV and it was like, oh man, old Scooby Doo, let's just watch it. And so that was the morning.
Yeah, no, we've recapped some of the older stuff, including the Nutcracker Scoop, which was one of my favorite, especially the early era projects. Because, ooh, baby, those early projects were a bit of a slog in terms of the movies, but I'm sure the like cartoon episodes were pretty good. So, do you want to just jump into this recap, or do you have anything else to say about your Scooby-Doo experience before we jump in?
Now let's just go. Let's just vibe.
Let's Corbin blew it up and jump in. So anyways, so this movie takes place in the South, I think Louisiana, right? Frequent location for the Scooby-Doo Cinematic Universe. I will say that. He froze. I don't know if he can hear me. Bestie
We're back.
froze. Oh, you're back. He's back.
You
Technical
can't.
difficulties.
Okay.
Listen, they know all about technical difficulties in the world of stage productions. So Matt is joining us for the musical theater episode, which is perfect because he loves musicals. But did you have anything to say about the Louisiana part of this?
Yeah. It's very, very Louisiana. We open full Princess and the Frog. We're on the bayou. There's some random guy in a.
It was also giving Arabian Nights.
A little bit. That little opening.
Yeah, so that's Thule, who I love him, but I don't know what the fuck he was doing in this movie. I'm sorry for cursing so early into the podcast, but like, what was he here for? Like, I like him, like just to set up the boots, I guess, and the fact that we're on the bayou.
Oh, is that? Yeah, he made no sense. It was just like, what? You just open it and it's 2 minutes of this character who then doesn't show up again until one scene an hour later.
Yeah.
In a movie, these Scooby-Doo movies are not that long. This, like, I don't
My
even think.
theory, he was padding the runtime.
Yeah, this movie didn't even hit 80 minutes.
And
So
I appreciate it.
But so the fact that then we have to open, it's just like, what is happening here?
Yeah. But anyway, he sings a song about the bayou. He fights off some gators. And he shows us a crown that he found in a swamp that came from Unwilling Vampire Ride. And then so we get a flashback sort of style movie, which I do appreciate. This is different. But we go to the investigation under the sewers. Wait, before we go further, this was your first viewing of this movie, right? You've never seen it before?
Yes, I had never seen it.
All right. I had seen this in sophomore year of college. My friend and I, we had Boomerang, and we watched some Scooby-Doo movies that year, including Zombie Island on her birthday. But we watched this one. It was my first time viewing. I didn't remember anything of it other than the fact that it was like, in my head, it was like more of an opera. And there was like a bride ceremony at the end where like Daphne was marrying a vampire. That's all I remembered. I could not have told you this movie took place in Louisiana. This could have taken place in like San Francisco for all I remembered. Or Calgary, Alberta, Canada. But it did come out on March 13th, 2012, about 6 months from the last one. So yeah, they're investigating the sewers under a factory, and Fred is talking about this cockroach monster. But they end up finding out that there was a real monster, but then also a baby cockroach. Velma subdues it, and the cockroach monster is Mr. Clopper. he wanted to build up his extermination business. So Velma sees everyone like kind of struggling because Scooby and Shaggy, they fainted. Daphne is stressing out of the cockroach, and Velma's like, vacation time. And I support vacation time because these characters need to rest.
Yeah, and I like this framing for a movie. I mean, this kind of almost a little bit of the framing of the first live action movie too.
Yeah.
Just like start off at the end of an investigation and then we're like, okay, we're done here for a bit. Let's go somewhere nice.
Yeah, well,
and then
a lot of
hijinks-
these end up starting off as vacation movies, and then they end up doing their job on vacation. But there are some that they just kind of show up to do work, like they get called in.
they just want to go to like a beaches resort
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just
Well,
enjoy life, and then it never happens.
yeah, they need to like get a union involved to make sure they have vacation time or something. I don't know. Mystery Inc. should have vacation time, and I mean, we get loving your job, but there's a healthiness to a work-life balance. Fred and Daphne and Velma and Shaggy and Scooby, especially Shaggy, always wants a vacation.
Mm-hmm. Look, Mystery Incorporated, the original victims of the gig economy, the original gig workers.
Anyway, so on the road in the mystery machine, Velma won't tell them where their secret destination is, and Shaggy's like, as long as there's no monsters. And then they start singing, and I was like, wait, this is a musical? And I was like, oh baby.
I have thoughts.
This was one of the better songs. I'm gonna also pull up the set list later today, and we can talk about some of the musics. But this one was called "Done with Monsters."
Which, yeah, it's a fine little thing.
It was giving Total Drama World Tour musical numbers to me.
It was, I guess, the concept of a Scooby-Doo musical. There's my thought. Just the concept of a Scooby-Doo musical. Like, anything can be made a musical. I don't know if everything should be made a musical.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yes. And this was, I feel like it didn't commit fully. Like, the songs are not that long, and again, the movie's not that long, but there was enough time between them all that it would feel very, that you would kind of forget that it's a musical, and then they would start singing again, and you'd be like, oh, right, this is a musical.
For sure, yeah. And there were 2 songs that stood out. The other ones I can't like even remember. Like, I'm looking at the track listing, and transparently, I watched half of this movie last night. I got to around 50 minutes, and then I watched the last 30 minutes a little bit before the podcast. So maybe those are more fresh in my head because there were only 2 musical numbers. But like, the vampire's bite, couldn't even tell you what it was about. Mindy Sterling sings in. She's like vampire actor. No, she's Lita. Okay, I don't remember that one. And Scooby and Me, don't remember it, that like the song itself. Like, the only ones I remember is the like kind of like, it was giving Cheetah Girls too, the flamenco little instrumentation, and it's like the waltz scene with Daphne and Brahm as the vampire. That one was kind of catchy. And then the other one, like, I just remember because it's like do Scooby Doo. Like they
also reprise it at the end.
Yes, that's why. But like, even like, that's the only one that I really remembered. The other ones were kind of all there.
We'll talk more about them when we get there.
For sure. And we'll also like stop down at the end and like talk about all the musical numbers for sure. But they end up arriving to Chauve-Soiville. I don't know how to speak French. A small town in Louisiana. It's hosting a vampire festival, Vampire Palooza. And this was very of a time, Matt, don't you think? Because there was like aggressive references to Twilight and the Twilight fanatics out there in this film.
It hit. It was very, that's it. I feel like it didn't go far enough. I feel like
Matt wanted more.
I wrote down in my notes my like, not Daphne and Velma being Twilight girlies, but also I feel like it should have gone harder into it. It should have gone like fully into it.
Yeah.
Because all of the vampires were very just generic. We find out at this palooza they're the guests of Dr. Vincent Van Helsing, who is the descendant of Abraham Van Helsing from Dracula. Also, I love half of the back half of this movie is like silly Shaggy and Scooby. Vampires aren't real when like Dracula is just straight up canon into this world.
Right.
It's like Dracula was a documentary, actually.
So this is a question that my friend Lindsay, every time she pops on the Scooby-Doo podcast, likes to bring up. This movie really made me feel the way Lindsay generally feels. Is like, I don't like the mixture of like, I don't mind like these monsters that are based in lore. Like that's totally cool. But I was like, for the longest part of this movie, it was frustrating because I was like, I couldn't remember if this was a real person or if this was going to have like a thing at the end where it's like, oh, fantasy exists in this world. Because my biggest frustration with the Scooby-Doo is like, I love the episodes that are like, oh, we're going to go solve the mystery. And it seems realistic. But then there's this big like reveal that it's all based in science. And this is the mechanism, which this movie thankfully ended up doing. But throughout the rest of the movie, in my head, I remembered it as being like, oh, there's like magical forces at play. And sometimes that can frustrate me because I want, it confuses my little brain sometimes. And that's what frustration is at the end of the day, what hurts my brain.
Yeah. A Scooby-Doo should always be just like, it always should just end with like the Sherlock Holmes, and this is how you've committed this crime.
I love the camp of the magical monsters, especially when there's like fun, like creativity. I mean, we love a VFX. We love the special effects and how creative these little people can be. But at the end of the day, I do love the unmasking, the like, oh, this is how they did this, this, and this. This is why we saw the projector here earlier. Like, I love that part of Scooby-Doo. That feels quintessential Scooby-Doo. That's my Scooby-Doo. I don't know if you feel similarly, or you like the Ghoul School, the Boo Brothers, where it's more horror fantasy for kids.
I love the old, I'm a big fan of the old school, you know. Yeah, unmask it, and it always winds up being like some old white guy just doing it for money, and that's how it always goes in these. But I feel like some of the science, some of the like, and here's the totally real science way we did this, has turned into here's this completely fantastical way. Like, not to get too spoil ahead, but this guy's flying with just hover boots at a certain point. Our bad guy, who, spoilers, watch till the end of the podcast. Yeah, that's fine. We'll never explain this technology. And it's like, wait. Let's discuss here, please.
Yeah, no, I like the fact that it's kind of like random, like, oh, we'll never address it again. But if you're looking at it from a critical lens, it's very unfulfilling. And maybe that's why this movie feels low to me compared to some of the other stuff. But Shaggy and Scooby are annoyed that they're at Vampire Palooza because they're like, it's vacation time, but then they're like, vampires aren't real. But like you said earlier, in the universe of this film, of this cinematic universe, vampires are real because they are literally profiting off the story of Van Helsing.
They literally mentioned it's like, oh yeah, they literally mentioned that it's like, yeah, this was founded by Abraham Van Helsing after he beat Dracula, which is like, so this is real. Mm-hmm. Vampires aren't real except for the one time they were very real.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But they enter the festival and they meet Jesper Pobel. I think that's the teenager, right? And I was like, oh my god, it's Rob Paulsen because I recognize the voice acting.
Yeah, no, Pobel is the mayor. Is the one picketing. I don't think that teenager ever gets a name.
Okay, true, yeah, but I like the teenager. So we see him first. Then we see Jesper Pobel. Oh yeah, he's an anti-vampire agitator. He's picketing. We stand.
You can tell there were standards and practices here because just the way he talks, he has that very like Southern gentleman and I'm mad about something kind of voice. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you just want to hear this man call everything an affront to God or something, but standards and practices got in. It's like, we can't actually make him like a preacher. Yeah. But that's very much the vibe he has here.
He definitely has like Southern preacher vibe. And we also meet Lita Rutland, who's the festival organizer. Anything noteworthy about her at this moment or no?
No, not really.
And of course,
Capitalism.
capitalism. And of course, Vincent Van Helsing, who's the host and the unsuccessful author of vampire books. He also takes them to see the Vampire Museum, shows off the wedding jewelry, and the glass face casket containing the inner body of Valdronia, a centuries-old vampire. And
Casually just opens it and is like, here's the corpse I have on display.
he really just kind of wants to show off. That's what it feels like. He's like, look at my collection. First red flag.
Look at all of my artifacts that are just out here and you can touch, and I'm not going to get mad that you're touching the, like, hundreds of year old shit I have lying around.
Action and magic, he does not know.
Oh!
Anyways, it's time to go to a show performed by Fang and Shans, a troupe of vampire actors that perform at night. They have an introductory song sung by Brahm. They attempt a vampire resurrection chant, and Valdronia appears. But it's not the actor the troupe expected to play the role, named Henry. Valdronia ends up flying off. The audience claps, thinking it's all part of the act. But Van Helsing thinks it's real because they used an authentic magical ritual. And he's like, you actors, how dare you? But Daphne is like, Brahm. And Fred is like very jealous about it.
I have too many thoughts about
Pop
this
off.
scene. Okay, so I as the resident theater kid here, I have problems with the musical choices here. Why? So you're coming in and it's this. First off, this is just a troupe of, like, goth kids who are like, we're vampires and we're edgy and we're gonna do this stuff. And it's like, all right, I guess. But then they start, like, doing their performance and it's not like anything dark or, like, goth or edgy or cool. It straight up sounds like, you know, all that jazz. It's like full Chicago. I'm like, what is this? Isn't right.
Fosse.
Yeah, you walk into the haunted house and they're playing, like, they're not even playing, like, creepy generic music. It's like, what? Why are they playing K-pop in here? Like, that was the vibes. It was just like, it's off and I don't get it. You know, you're vampires. Give me an organ. Hi. Clearly.
Right?
I have thoughts.
That's like also like despite the fact that the song later on that we addressed earlier is kind of a bop, there should not be flamenco in vampire music.
Yeah, that. And then
also let's address your Phantom of the Opera shirt. I have to.
Right. Yes. We love. I dressed for the occasion.
As you should. I didn't. I'm wearing an Avatar shirt.
Hey, it's animated. It's fine. Yeah, and then they do this whole thing, and they're like, okay, and then he just appears, and everyone, like, it dips. And then as always, no one ever takes things, I think. At least Shaggy and Scooby are, like, the only ones who take things the level of serious I would take them.
Mm-hmm.
Where no one's just like, holy fuck, so did we actually just release a vampire? That's insane, right? Instead, Brahm, our lead, decides to take the moment to be like, I'm a Mac on that one right there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go hit on that one.
Not a big fan of Brahm here.
No, he's there to just be kind of generic hot, but even then it's like, okay, you could do better, Daphne.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on this whole sequence other than what you've already addressed? Anything else that from your notes that you want to hit?
Like, what it's doing is fun, and I get the plot, and I love a weird, like, fun, campy vampire musical. I wish they had gone for it fully. Mm-hmm. Also, again, speaking of supernatural stuff that doesn't exist, how does that make sense?
Right. Also, I feel like
they're doing half of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's rubbing me the wrong way that as professional actors, they're relying on improv rituals to like that. What's next in the plot? Do they not have a next part? Like, they're just so impressed by the vampire that they shut it down. They're like, oh, this actually worked. Like, what are they expecting? Henry to like show up and like do the rest? Like it like, I feel like, I don't know. I'm such a planner, and even though I love improv, I feel like if I am performing, I need to have at least an idea of what the outline is. You can't show up and just be like, okay, ritual time, and then like it goes better than you expected. The special effects pop off, and then you're just like, okay, we're gonna shut down Daphne. By the way, hi. Like,
Yeah, I feel they're also a little inconsistent with like vampire lore here.
right.
Because they make a note here that it's like, oh, all these performers are like so dedicated to the vampire lifestyle that they say they'll only perform at night. Bestie, when do you think theater happens?
Hey, there could be a matinee.
Okay, so it's like great. So you don't do a matinee on Sunday, great. But then like throughout this movie, we constantly have like vampires, quote unquote, just like out middle of the day.
And they're not sparkling.
Or exploding, depending on which version of vampires we're in. But it's very just like, okay, so if you're gonna make it a point that like people at least think this, then like the next scene where we see Brahm is he's at the festival the next day and just out with like a pair of like crappy glasses on, like the little black like tiny sunglasses that are clearly just there to make you look cool. So it's like, okay, so like what's the vibe here? What's the plan?
The aesthetics were off. But we also forgot to mention one of the scenes before where Scooby and Shaggy just like eat their garlic necklaces, and then they just sit next to people and they're like, "Ooh, you smell bad," and Shaggy's like, "Zoinks, dude," or whatever he does.
That's basically it.
We have to talk about when he says zoinks later on in the movie, and like Fred's like, "What?" And it's like, obviously it's your friend Shaggy, but we'll get there.
You know what? I'm 5 cloves of garlic on 5 whole heads of garlic on a thing. That's the appropriate amount of garlic to put in a dish. So.
Are you a garlic girly?
I am.
Okay. Like I started adding garlic, like crunchy garlic, as in addition to the crunchy onions and dry seaweed on my poke bowls. Oh, no regrets. I love poke rainbow. If anyone's in the SoCal area, highly recommend.
Yeah, anytime I get a recipe that's like this much garlic, I typically will double that.
Okay, let's hang out on Halloween and like have garlic bread or something.
That's an appropriate amount of garlic, you know.
Okay, but also this is going to be very niche to people who live in Los Angeles, but the Smokehouse garlic bread is trash. I'm sorry. Have you been there, Matt?
I have not, and now I know to avoid it.
It's literally like garlic bread. It's cheesy garlic bread. It's literally a baguette or whatever French bread that they put there, and they just put like Cheeto dust on top or Kraft macaroni, like boxed mac and cheese dust on top. And I'm like, but then Tangela was trying to argue with me the other day. I was like, it was better last time. I was like, no, I can't. I don't trust. The one time I had it, I was disappointed as hell because everyone was like, the garlic bread. I was like, okay. And I'm a garlic bread fan. I went in. I was so disappointed. I have trust issues now.
I have very high expectations with garlic bread. It is a slight joke in my family that my mother married my father for his garlic bread.
Well, I know whose house I'm pulling up to. We're going up to Matt's dad's house.
Slaps hard, and it's very good. So I am biased.
The bias is real.
Bias is real. So
all right. So next up
is sadder than bad garlic bread. Now I want garlic bread, damn it.
Right? Let's go get garlic bread after this. The gang offers to investigate and they head back to the museum. Valdronia has actually left his tomb. They're like, what the heck? But it's still sealed. So they are like thinking about what this has happened. And then there's a crash and the vampire jewels are gone. And Valdronia flies up, takes a close look at Daphne. He's like, my bride. And then he's like, okay, bye. And then he flies away. Daphne's still there with them. And like the others try to attack him with like stakes, but he flies away. Any thoughts to this?
Modern Scooby has, been giving Daphne more of a personality, and I like that. And I also like when they give her personalities that sort of keep her, give her a bit of an Elle Woods thing going on, where like she's still very much like the feminine one who's into like fashion and makeup, but like that expertise impacts the plot.
Have you seen Zombie Island? It's from the late 90s. I highly recommend it to you because I feel like if you like Boss Bitch Daphne, that's a good one. She's like an entertainment news reporter for like paranormal stuff. Like that's her whole brand.
Good for
And
her.
she like starts off the movie like on kind of like a talk show promoting her next like adventure documentary. She's like basically Ghost Whisperers, but like hot.
That is iconic. Yeah. So I love when they do that to Daphne. This is not a movie where they're doing that to Daphne.
No.
They basically said, well, what are her characteristics? And they said, well, Daphne's the hot one. And they
As
just
she is. She was one of my first celebrity crushes.
and they just kind of built the plot around, well, Daphne's hot. They do make her competent though, which is what I do like. Like even when she's never like, I need to be saved. She's always like, all right, I'm like shit's happening, but like, how am I gonna get out of this?
Yeah, no, I'm pro Daphne in this film. I think I like the characterization of Daphne. I was kind of worried when I started this project. Granted, it's been over 2 years, so maybe I'm misremembering some certain movies. But my anxiety was like, oh, I worry what they're gonna do with Daphne's character. Like Velma's the smart one, Fred's the himbo, but what are they gonna make Daphne? Is she just gonna be kind of like Fred's eye candy? I didn't remember as much like if they were going to give her much dimensionality, but I've been pleasantly surprised at how much like she's always like ever there's an action sequence, usually she's like she has like a karate background, even in the live action ones with Sarah Michelle Gellar. Is it Gellar or Geller?
I don't remember.
I don't know, but she's a queen. Anyways, like she like had some fun action sequences. So I'm a pro Daphne. I think that she's been a pleasant surprise, and I've been like Daphne and Scooby were my number 1 and number 2. So Scooby first, of course. So like seeing Daphne like like jump over the expectations that I had for her seamlessly has been pretty fun.
I think it really helps that you have I think it helps that you have Velma in the team so that you can't just make Daphne the girl.
Yeah.
Like you would if they were making Scooby-Doo in the 90s. Like that was a very thing where it's like, all right, we got to make sure everyone's diverse, which means we have one of each sort of diversity, and then we have one girl, and then we're even, we're diverse. But that means it's like, well, there's the girl one, and she's in pink, and she does all the girl stuff. Whereas because you have Velma, then it's like, well, we can't just make one the girl because there's not just one girl.
For sure.
So they both kind of have to have, and even though maybe older Daphne kind of gets a little of the like, she's the girly one, like they're still both.
No, and I and then sometimes they play with that. Like last week, in the episode we talked to, or in the movie we talked about, like Velma had the hots for this guy, and it was kind of uncharacteristic of her. But like they play around with the different expectations of what we expect from the character. Also, like I will acknowledge that we only did 6 projects before 1998. And then we've only focused on like stuff from 1998 on in terms of the movies. And granted, a lot of those early movies were mostly just Scooby, Shaggy, Scrappy. So Daphne was only in 2 of these, I want to say, from the first 6. So luckily we didn't have to worry about that. And then by the late 90s, the first one, Zombie Island, was going to be where Daphne's a boss queen. So that's just like kind of been probably something to note, because maybe she and Velma didn't have as much character development in the 80s and the 90s before these movies started coming around.
There's a lot less of the Velma falling down and her glasses flying off, which happens, I feel like, literally in every episode.
Well, so in the last...
it's just this, and I see it in my head.
The last movie, the Phantasaur one, she was really...
Oh, that one's great!
Oh, so you've seen it. Okay, so you know how she's like all over this guy that's basically the male version of her, right? And then they play with the expectation with the glasses scene, how they both lose their glasses. And I was hoping that they would be like, oh, these are yours, but they didn't. I was so annoyed. But that was a so much better movie than this one. I will say it.
This is not a Legend of the Phantasaur podcast, but why did they make Velma fall in love with her twin? That was so weird.
Also, we all know Velma's mostly a lesbian, so...
Yeah. They're all...
Was Velma the queer representation you wished for as a kid? Or, I mean, you wanted... She was there as a kid. I don't know why I said that.
It's like, look, they keep trying to pair these people off, and it's like, just let all 4 of them be poly together.
Right?
fine.
Okay, thank you. You said it.
And
Anyways.
I'm not usually a person who's like resolved the love triangle into a polycule, but like this is one of my few ones where I'm like,
This is one of
no,
the few exceptions. Like it's been this, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, and then like maybe one other example that I remember where it's like, okay, just make them an open relationship, throuple, situationship sort of thing. But
it's four people who just have been driving around together and appear to have literally no, literally like very rarely does it mention them having.
well, so they're
Family.
teenagers on paper, but in my head they've always been like 22 to 25-ish.
Yeah, they've also been teenagers on paper since like 1970. Like at this point, they can be a solid 25.
Yeah,
And
no, like we know that Fred and Daphne hook up in the Mystery Machine probably, but like they're just like four hippies driving around the country, driving around the world. They don't really like. They probably hook up with other people too, but they just probably have hook up all the time. And while Scooby goes and like goes on his walks or whatever.
yeah, I'm like, why do you think Fred's always telling Shaggy and Scooby to go?
As they're high, they have.
Let's split up, all right?
Yeah.
You go that way with the dog. We're gonna go hang out upstairs.
Yeah. Right? Okay. We go to Van Helsing's home and they talk with Daniel Van Helsing. Daniel, the security guard. The guy they found out unconscious, and he's like, "Oh, I have vampire bite marks on my neck." But they were like, "Oh no, you just got zapped by a taser, your own taser." I'm like, what? Matthew, you have thoughts. I can see it in your face.
Fred being like, "Oh no, that whole reveal is great because it's like this is also what I love about modern Scooby is like in orders of competence, like Shaggy and Scooby are bringing up the bottom, obviously. Like they help out, but it's always an accident. And then like, but what I love about modern Scooby-Doo is like Fred is barely above them in terms of competence. It's like, were it not for Daphne and Velma, nothing would get done. Because the way that this happens is the guy comes in and they're like, he's got these things on his neck. Oh no, Shaggy and Scooby are freaked out about vampires. So they're like, it's got to be vampire bites. Oh my god. And they're like, no, like vampires aren't real. Like also, whoosh, they open the light and the guy's like, he's fine. They're all like, maybe he's immune to vampire venom. Blah blah blah. And then they're like, and then Fred just goes, no, dude, I think you just like got tased. I think those are taser burns. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. How'd you know, Fred? And he's like, well, I volunteer at the police academy. And there's a flash to him like getting tased multiple times. Then we flash back. It's like, oh, and then Daphne goes, also, we found your taser right next to you. It's like, yes.
The buffoonery. And at this moment, I thought, ACAP. Anyways, we go to the festival, which has been popping off with the publicity of the vampires. So Lita's like, hell yeah, let's bankroll in this. Meanwhile, Jesper Poubelle, he's like, oh, media exposure, let's do this. And he's like, I'll run for mayor. So they're all profiting off of it. But on the meantime, they get attacked by Valdronia, who clings to the top of the car and reaches through the skylight. And then Daphne ends up pulling a piece of this frag brick that, spoiler alert, comes back, but in my opinion, has no purpose being part of the plot because I don't understand why this was necessary information, but whatever. And then Velma forces him off and he's like, okay, we're going to go run through a low tunnel. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, Daphne almost like died. That was the closest I've ever seen a character come to death on this franchise. And if she was like 1 second slower, her head would have popped off and that would have been a dark episode of a children's show.
Definitely. We did miss a song number here.
Oh yes, please. I'm sorry.
When when we first get and everyone's like, oh my gosh, a vampire attacked. A vampire attacked our vampire festival at our very heavily vampire implied town, which is like a thing. Lita, who's the person who's putting this on and is like annoyed that it's not doing well, is like, time to drum up some business, and goes into this like kind of sort of a mob song, but not really like a good mob song of just like, there's vampires. Be aware. We can help you out. And I don't love it. Works here because so many Scooby-Doo villains are just capitalists.
Yeah.
But
You see Monster in Mexico, right?
I don't think so.
Another one I'd recommend to you. Okay. We're going to make a little list, and then when we hang out in person, we can just watch them.
Yes. But I don't love the kids movie villain song that's just about like how great money is. This one's kind of able to kind of fudge that line. And it's fun. And this is also where we have to set up like these are mysteries. We have to set up the different people who could actually be, what could it actually be?
Mm-hmm.
And this is our like, there's a motive here for keeping this.
It's well, I will say though, there are some fun villain songs out there, especially like this was like giving a wannabe Disney direct-to-video sequel.
It's very that.
In terms of the music numbers.
Yeah, very that.
Back at the festival, Poubelle enters with a gang of vampire hunters deputized by the sheriff, who will start enforcing the dusk to dawn curfew. So that bothers Lita because she can't profit off it, but she can't do anything because government. Meanwhile, this is kind of where they all split off from each other randomly, and there's no real like reason for it. Whereas usually Fred is like, Scooby, Shaggy, you go this way. Velma and Daphne and I will take care of the upstairs stuff, aka make some sounds. Make some sounds as a euphemism. Ew.
Time to go make some sounds.
Now I can't think of like a drummer, like a drum solo. Oh. Anyway,
we're gonna go make some sounds.
Scooby and Shaggy end up wandering the fairgrounds, the bayou, and end up running into Bram and his fellow actors, who are kind of strange. And Scooby and Shaggy are like, let's diffuse this situation. But then Valdronia attacks. So they speed off. Shaggy gets grazed by a wooden stake thrown by Valdronia, which is like, also, Shaggy, at this point, you should realize he's not a real vampire because he threw a stake at you. And I'll circle back to this in a second. And then he's like, oh, I got a vampire bite. This is probably at the time where I was kind of falling asleep when my movie was watching, and then I watched the rest later the next day. But they both end up covered in ketchup, and they get spotted by Poubelle, declares them both vampires, and Scooby is apparently a shapeshifter who has taken the form of a dog. I'm like, sir, go home, you're drunk. This is why you suck.
To be fair, this is not the one part of Scooby canon where they try to explain why he can talk.
Right?
This isn't a Mystery Incorporated podcast.
No. Well, we can do that another day. But here we get so Valdronia. Like, can we talk about the fact that this man threw a stake and thought he could get away with it? Because I don't remember why vampires don't like stakes. Maybe you can explain it to me because you're more literate and smart. But I know that vampires shouldn't be touching steaks or garlic or anything like that.
I think the stakes, you just stab them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Also, the steaks are just like pieces of wood that look like a giant like Crayola colored pencil, right? Does that count as a steak?
These were long. There were some long steaks in this. Normally, when you see them, they're like handheld.
Ironically, there were very few steaks in the actual movie. See what I did there?
Yeah, this
so smart.
This like to play a little fast and loose with vampire lore. I also feel like there was such more of an opportunity to play with like little vampire tropes. Mm-hmm. Like you could like just as references, you could make more. Like they have the one Twilight reference, but they don't really go into it. They do like a little bit, even like maybe if you don't want to touch on stuff that's not in the public domain, I mean, just do more Dracula jokes. It would have been fine. But we could have gotten that. I'm like mad we're in New Orleans and we don't have any like Anne Rice Vampire Chronicles things. It's like we're in Louisiana. Come on. Throw me a bone. Have like one cosplayer at the festival who's like very clearly Lestat and Louis. Like, come on, give me that. I personally am gonna say From Dusk Till Dawn is a reference to that movie, which is vampires.
But it's
And
also like a curfew that like makes sense.
it's also absolutely a thing and could not have been a reference. But I'm gonna.
You are reclaiming the reference.
I'm reclaiming my references.
So Shaggy is like, I'm gonna be turning into a vampire, and Scooby, he's like, go bye, Scooby, bye. But Scooby's like, no, and then they sing a song together that is called, I forget what it's called. Wait, 1 second. Trying to scroll down to my notes. There we go. Scooby and Me. Also, shout out to Randy Rogel. I don't know if that's how you say his name, but he wrote all the songs for this movie. Sir got his coin.
You know, writing it is good. I will say this song, we got like a whole Shaggy musical number, and
see, you say as if I didn't fall asleep in the middle of this song.
Wow, so I'm the only one who got it. Wow.
No, I'll rewatch it before I upload the podcast so I can feel like a completionist. But this is when I was like, okay, let me close the computer and circle back to this tomorrow.
Yeah. The Shaggy voice is not one I want to be here singing.
Okay. Well, how do you feel Matthew Lillard's been doing as Shaggy in these movies? Because he was the Scooby-Doo live action Shaggy, and then when Casey Kasem died, he kind of replaced him for a while. How do you feel? He's also one of the random celebrities I've seen out in public.
Yeah, I love him. You know, Casey Kasem's great. I think Matthew Lillard has been doing a great job in these movies. He is, I think, the Shaggy in my head. When I like try and do an impression, it winds up coming out a little more like him. But it's not. It has nothing to do with Matthew Lillard as a performer. I think he's doing great. I just am like, that voice doesn't lend itself to sounding musical. So your options are either you sound like Shaggy or you sing well. Mm-hmm. And he sounded like Shaggy in these.
He did.
Okay. Everyone else are a little more normal. Although there were some.
Velma was a little like Velma singing.
Yes.
I think if I had to rank them by voices, I think Grey Delisle had the best voice as Daphne in terms of singing.
Yeah.
And that's why she got her own number.
Yes. I would say no one like blew me away with singing, which like this was a direct-to-video kids movie. I'm not expecting, Broadway quality, but Shaggy was particularly rough, and the fact that we got multiple Shaggy numbers, I was like, but why?
Mm-hmm. All right, so now we get Shaggy and Scooby the next day. They spend the night in a hollow tree. They go into a sort of swamp creatures. They get attacked by leeches, and they seek refuge in a cabin belonging to Thule's boat rentals. They meet Thule, that's not his real name, but he's an inventor whose prototype flying shoes were stolen by a vampire a couple of weeks ago, and it made him a little crazy. He offers them gumbo, and they eat it, and he reveals the secret ingredient, leeches, and they run away in his old rental boats. And I'm like, I don't know, like, I'm not gonna disrespect the man because they clearly like the food. So at that point, like, you already like the food. What's the issues with the leeches?
I fully missed the boots thing.
Yeah, no, he shows them a photo. Like, this is like more, he like shows them like, this was my prototype. But also, Jim Cummings was going for something, and I don't know if this was appropriate for him as a white man to be voicing, but
I had the same thing. There are white people who have Cajun accents. It's not particularly a race thing. However, I don't know if this was like a good Cajun accent.
Mm-hmm.
It felt very what's the fly? What's the firefly from Prince and the Frog?
Oh, Ray.
Ray is very that like
La Belle Evangeline. I think it's the same guy.
Oh, it might be.
It's very like Ray in Princess and the Frog.
But it was very like
it's literally the same guy.
God, that explains it. But it was very much like it was like, okay, I don't think anyone has this accent in real life. This feels very comedy, thick Cajun.
Mhm. Yeah. Winnie the Pooh, yes. Thule, no, for Jim
No.
Cummings.
I,
um,
I so I fully missed the boots thing. That I
it
guess
was a
explains
throwaway
why
thing so
this.
they could set it up for later, like
But
100%.
yes, it explains why this scene is in the movie. Because some of you, the second act of this movie really drags. And I was fully
We
like,
actually that's interesting to me because I think the first act dragged a little bit longer for me, but also I was sleepy, so that might have been why.
that might have been it. This
Now,
at the
usually I
point,
rewatch these before podcasting, but because of my schedule today, I wasn't able to squeeze that in. But yeah, no, this movie a little bit of a drag at different points, regardless of when we found the drag to happen, and not the good
yeah,
drag that Matt loves.
I found I found the like the from the attacks on the basically everything with just Shaggy and Scooby in the bayou. I was like, this is boring. Why does this need to be here? It didn't add anything. It
Mm-hmm.
just it split up the group so that they could all kind of come together at the end, and it gives us a little variety. Which I'm like, even if you needed to do this, there were better ways to do it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang are still at the Van Helsing home. They now doubt the vampire is real because they found the fabric from the sleeve being modern material. Van Helsing is like, oh, the vampire coffin was open when it first arrived and the body was redressed. He's also like, oh, here's some old material that came from the original garments. They also go have Daphne question the Fangenschnauz group. And she sees the camera there and she ends up doing a musical waltz number with flamenco instrumentation with Bram, asking about how if she wants to be immortal, and she says no thanks, and then she gets kidnapped by the troupe, and that is going to be the musical number. Do you want to live forever? Which I actually thought was one of the best ones. It probably is the best one. Probably not the most memorable one, but the best one in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't really remember it.
It was giving Cheetah Girls
Yeah,
too. That's why it was.
I have no thoughts.
No thoughts, no thoughts. Blank canvas. So the next part of the film is going to be where back at the house, they find out that if Valdronia marries and steals the soul of a woman who's beautiful and pure of heart, his powers will become much greater. The marriage must take place that night, and Fred gets a text message conveniently from Daphne, who still has her phone, even though she's been kidnapped and tied to a thing. But she tells him that she's been kidnapped by the actress and she's the vampire bride. And
That
Fred
was my
probably got a little
favorite
jealous in that
part.
moment.
That was my favorite part where Fred's like, "Oh, I got a text." Opens his flip phone. It's 2012. We do have smartphones, but this is a full-on like, like
Yeah.
Motorola thing, and it's just a black background, green text that says "Kidnapped by vampires, help." It's like what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, like her arms are. I'm just like, obviously they had to not share that scene because they probably struggled to come up with a reason why she was allowed to text. But Fred starts making a stake shooting gun, and they all head to the swamp. They try to stop the ceremony from taking place, but a pair of monstrous hands emerge from the reeds in the bayou and drag Van Helsing away. He shouts at them, telling them to save themselves, and then Fred just keeps firing different stakes, and Shaggy says zoinks, and Scooby and Shaggy are there, and they are brought up to date about the wedding. Meanwhile, Daphne is getting her hands tied to the two trees, and she's like, oh, you're going to be have immortality from the vampires if Valdronia takes you as his bride. They put the vampire wedding jewels on her. They sing the song, and the monster swirls around with the mist and sends the actors to sleep, telling them that when they wake up, they will be immortal. And Daphne also passes out. And she's like, oh, my husband or whatever. Anyways, any thoughts on all this, Matt?
I mean, we're getting up into it. Velma also has a couple of great fun lines at the back half of this
Anything that you took
film.
notes on?
I love the one she has of just like, I'm pure of heart. Why does anyone want to kidnap me? Which is really funny.
And honestly, true. Velma deserves some baddies in her life.
I want Velma to get kidnapped for a ritual. That sounds wrong. Anyway.
Scooby and Shaggy end up creating a distraction with the camera, which shout out to Shaggy. He was brave in this moment. Valjonia chases them. Valma
Still got
sneaks
that
in.
big Shaggy
unties
programming in from Phantosaur.
Yep. Valjonia chases everyone, shoots balls of fire, and Shaggy accidentally turns on the propelling fan on the boat, and the mist blows away the garments. And Fred ends up catching with a net and the stakes and pins the monster upside down against a tree. They find out it's Vincent Van Helsing. Oh my God, I'm so surprised. He exploited the vampire wedding to create his own new tourist attraction to sell more books. He wanted the mystery gang to be there so that if established monster hunters were like, oh, this place is haunted, they're gonna get more tourist attractions. And Velma's like, your book's not half bad. And then the guy's like, you liked my book? And she's like, let's not get carried away. Like,
that was the other one I loved. It's just like in his book. I read it. It's not that bad. You really liked it? I said it's not that bad. It's like, oh.
yeah. But also, like, what a weird logic to invite expert monster hunters who have like 100% track record to come and unmask you. Like, you are asking to go to jail.
Also, like, why would you kidnap one of them? Like, what is then ultimately the plan? What was ultimately his plan with Daphne? Why not just kidnap like a local woman?
It's so interesting, and like the delusion, like white men think they can get away with anything.
I don't quite understand this plan.
Matt, speak for your kind.
When did hey, I've never kidnapped anyone. I don't care what the police say. When did you put it together, at least who the bad guy was before this?
Yeah, I started sussing him around the time that like he started talking about the third moon, and then when he got grabbed away, I was like, oh, it's definitely him. Because for a while I was like, oh, it's Lita. She wanted the capitalism reasons, but then I was like, oh no, he like when he disappears, I feel like it's all of a sudden convenient that he's not around, and I was like, oh, maybe it's him again, because I didn't remember who it was. Whereas past ones I've seen, sometimes I'll remember who it was.
For me, the moment where I was like, no, it's definitely him, was when they were like, oh, we found this, we got the fabric on him, and it's modern fabric, so the vampire can't be real. And then he was just like, oh, yeah, that's because I totally did I know I said the tomb was never opened, but, like, I did open it because I had to redress him, because, like, he would have been naked, it's gross, but, like, here's the original fabric I have, which was just like, that's oddly specific.
Yeah.
Also,
it's weird.
Also, when they have a flashback of him pulling out the old fabric, and there's an insert of him ripping off the label that says random fabric circa whenever, 13 whatever.
That was the thing. I was like, what the hell?
What kind of museum are you running, sir? That you're just like, all right, I got to put a label on this random ass fabric. I don't remember where I got it. Random fabric, sure.
It's interesting for sure. But then we get Bram getting arrested, and then he's like, wait for me outside of jail. And she says, not on your life, bad boy. And that she doesn't date actors, which
I don't date
originally
actors.
My intro joke for you was like, and here's someone who will never date an actor, Matt.
You know.
But then they're like, time for another vacation, which hopefully will not have more monsters and they sing the song again. And that's the movie.
Yes, that is the movie.
Final thoughts on the movie, on the musical? It's a movie musical.
It is. You know, I don't think it's high art in any sense. I wish it was a better musical. But not to sound mean, I never come into the Scooby-Doo property with like the highest expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I was entertained for the most part, a little bit bored, but I think it works overall.
Yeah, no, so we'll definitely talk about this movie more when we do our segments. But let's just talk about the voice cast quickly. So, of course, we got the main cast: Frank Welker, Fred as Scooby, Matthew Lillard, Shaggy, Grey DeLisle, Daphne, Mindy Cohn as Velma. Any other standouts for you in terms of the voice cast? Because for me, it was definitely Rob Paulsen when I recognized him.
That little one where it was Rob. I love a Rob Paulsen. always. So it's always good to hear him pop up.
Yeah. But yeah, then Jim Cummings was also here. We got Oba Babatunde, Christian Campbell, Mindy Sterling, Jeff Bennett, lots of different people involved with this film. And we also get Jim Wise as Fred's singing voice, who was Coach Tugnut on Even Stevens. In terms of the music, any standouts in the music numbers?
I would say only the I would say only kind of the one that bookends, like going
The
on
Done
at
with
age.
Monsters.
Yes, that one was a fun sort of way to bookend
Yeah.
the thing. Oh, speaking of that, I forgot to mention in that first scene where they're like driving away, there's a little thing where Daphne's like, time to put in my music, puts in her CD, and they're all like, not show tunes. And I'm like, not Daphne being a theater girly.
You know,
Score one, we got one.
Yeah.
So Daphne was a theater kid in high school. All of the hottest people were, and it makes so much sense.
We stand. And then lastly, let's get into our segments. Because other than one you mentioned, the only other one that stood out for me was, of course, the whatchamacallit, the flamenco one that I mentioned earlier. I gotta get my share screen ready so that you can enjoy the spreadsheet madness. But let's start with the culprit game as we do here. Who did you think was going to be the culprit? Also, before I forget, Bets, what's her name, was also the singing voice for Bets Malone for Velma. So I just wanted to share that. Give her the actress the recognition. Yeah.
She ate.
All right. She ate, period. So let's, who did you think was the culprit? Did you also think it was Van Helsing?
I did. Like I said, I think at by that point, I was like, it could be a few people, and then I was like, no, I think it's him.
Yeah, I also got it. So with that, the score is 27 to 26.5 versus me and the co-host. But let's start talking about our MVPs and LVPs. So now every episode we give an MVP to one of the core five, or Scrappy if he's in the movie, and an LVP to the same group of characters. Plus, Matt, as our guest for this movie, you can give a bonus MVP to any character in the film, period, and a bonus LVP, as we instituted last week, to any character in the movie, regardless of if they're in the core five or not. But let's start with you as our guest. Do you have a strong sense of anything yet where you're going with these points?
Ooh, I think MVP. I know where I'm leaning. LVP is hard.
Okay, so you can do the MVP first, and then we'll think it through. We'll talk it out for the LVP.
There were a few. I think MVP. I gotta give it. I think this is a really strong Velma showing. She was on top of it, like start to finish. She was the only one still on top of everything. She felt like fully in control the entire time.
Yeah, and it's been a rough couple weeks for Velma, so this is nice to get her back into MVP swing of things.
Mm-hmm. I think she was very solid in this
film. All right.
Personally.
So for me, I'm giving my MVP to Miss Daphne. I mean, she got kidnapped by vampires and still managed to keep cool. She didn't get phased by Bram and like, oh, I'm going to take immortality. No, I thought she was a badass in this movie. And she deserves some flowers.
She also was good.
Yeah. Do you have your LVP ready, or do you want me to go first?
Oh man, LVP of the core five. Ooh, that's a rough one. You go first.
All right. Not to continuously dunk on Fred, because I feel like it's a common theme in this podcast, but Fred couldn't get his web shooter together to aim the stakes properly, and kept like we didn't even see him get it wet at one point, but it got wet and he couldn't, like, I was like, bro, you're in the middle of a like demon hunt, like get your things together. So Fred is getting my LVP, because otherwise there's not really much like I couldn't really figure out a reason to give it to Shaggy. Scooby wasn't getting it, no way, no how. Scooby has to be actively bad to get my LVPs. So yeah. What about you, Matt? Who are you giving it to?
See, you make a solid point for Fred, but I think I am going to. I think you make a solid point for Fred. I think I am going to actually give it to Shaggy.
Very
Just
valid.
being like, oh, a vampire bit me, despite the fact his mouth was nowhere near me. I'm now going to wander into the bayou for the rest of my days. That's a choice, my dude.
Yep, no, that's a very valid point as well. Giving Shaggy another LVP. So continue to track that. Do you have any bonuses that you want to give in terms of a MVP, LVP, or was this movie really not that memorable to you?
LVP, I would love to give to Thule. Why are you here? I think there is nothing worse, character-wise, than someone you could literally excise from the movie whole cloth and it would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Any bonuses or for MVP or nah?
who's an
I don't feel like
MVP?
there wasn't anyone really likable enough to give one. But that's on me. You get to have the pick.
Part of me wants to be truly chaotic and give it to what was that security guard's name? Dan.
Daniel, yeah.
Yeah, it's just hey, he's doing fine. He took a taser to the neck. I'm amazed that man is still up and walking and like still doing his job. Also,
Well,
I like a redhead. What can I say? I'm biased. It's my
all right. So with
Smith
that,
name.
Daniel gets the MVP. Someone I never thought twice about since we talked about him. And well, listen, that's kind of an iconic move.
Look, no one else deserved it in this movie.
You don't have to give anyone one, but apparently Daniel's going to be memorialized for life. So
you know what?
Here we are.
This is also going to be just really fun for your rankings when you put all the MVPs up, and
I'm going to be like, "Who's this?" Like,
you have to remember who the fuck this guy is.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get to the big event, the score of this film. Matt, we give our scores from 0 to 5 Scooby Snacks. People have tried, but we can't go lower than 0.25. That is the rule. If it is that bad, you can give it a 0.25. But otherwise, we do 0.25 increments. So 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, or the whole 0. Where are you ranking this film or rating this film? Sorry.
I think this is a 2.5. I think there is
2.5.
Yeah, I think solidly straight down the middle. If you want to watch this movie, go right ahead. I don't think there is any reason not to watch this movie. I don't think it is like actively bad in any real way where I'm like, save your time. But I also know there is more fun stuff out there for you to watch. So it may not be worth your time, but if you give it a look, you're probably not going to be disappointed.
For sure, yeah. In terms of where I'm giving it, I think I was hovering around a 2.75. But the fact that it's a campy musical, even if the musical numbers aren't that memorable, I don't know, that gives it a 0.25 bonus for me. So I'm going to leave it with a solid 3, leaving the average to be a 2.75. How do you feel about that, Matt? Does that feel right?
I'm good with that.
All right.
That's about where
well, that is it for our rankings and ratings and regular shenanigans that we have here. We're going to start to wind things down. Any final thoughts about Scooby-Doo, this movie? Anything you want to get off your chest, Matt, before we throw it over to plugs?
No, this has been lovely. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me be on.
Yes. So tell people where they can keep up with you if you want people to follow you on social media or any other projects you might be doing. And also, what is something that you want people to check out that you are a big fan of, whether it's a new movie, show, book that you're reading? It can be something old, but like, what is something you want to promote that isn't yours? A pop culture plug, if you will.
Alrighty, so personal plugs first. You can find me at mpinkmeWriter on Twitter. If you're still on Twitter for some reason, like me, you're a crazy person. You can find me there. You can check out, that's where I post links to a lot of my writing. That's kind of where stuff is put together. So you can find that. If you like media podcasts like this one, check out You Haven't Seen This. It's a podcast I do with my sister. We, every time we do an episode. I was about to say every week. We are not a weekly podcast, my God. Every episode, we go over a movie that one of us loves and the other one has not seen. It's a really fun time. We do pretty much everything. It's been
and I love how your picks are generally like these big, either like big blockbuster movies or like things, and then your sister's pick is like Cinderella 3: A Twist in Time,
which is one of my favorite episodes. So you never know what you're gonna get. Yeah, so you check that out. You haven't seen this pod on Instagram, Twitter, you can find us. And also, I'm looking down at my phone so I can pull up the link. Check out on Twitter and Instagram afterimage_en. That's the handle for a animated film and series concept that I'm writing and developing with one of my friends. I described it to someone afterward. I described it to someone the other day as a speed racer in the world of Blade Runner, and that's kind of the best way to give it a vibe. So keep up with us there. We are, again, working on developing it. Last month, we finished up our Kickstarter, got fully funded, so we're in full development. And I actually, real peek behind the development thing, just saw what's probably going to be pretty much the final version of our script earlier today, and it is solid.
Yeah. Well, also, in terms of, before you do your pop culture plug otherwise, I do have a question for you.
Yes.
Which drag queen most belongs in the Scooby-Doo Cinematic Universe, and which one would be most likely to do Scooby-Doo as Snatch Game?
Oh man. Here's the thing, it's no one on Drag Race, because I think the queens that belong the most in the Scooby-Doo universe are all the Dragula girls.
I said drag queen, I didn't say RuPaul's Drag Race.
I know, I'm like, you need an alt queen to do it. Of the ones coming to my head, I think an Erica Clash would be fun. She's alt, but she's not quite as like gross in the nice way I'm saying that. She's not quite as like blood and guts as some of the other queens on that show. Which that is the vibe. I just don't think it's the Scooby vibe.
Yeah.
Who would do your Snatch Game? Gosh.
Vanjie.
It's very hard because it could be so many different people.
Yeah. But yeah.
All-Stars 8 comes out tomorrow as we're recording this. I could see Jimbo doing like Daphne and just going insane with it. So I'm going to say that.
Interesting. And then in terms of a pop culture plug, do you have one top of mind?
Yeah, I do have one. I did technically work on this. Is that still cheating? Or can
That's fine. That's fine.
If you love, I think your listeners will really love, if you're a Scooby-Doo fan, you like a mystery and a little bit of a gothic vibe, check out the web series Headless, a Sleepy Hollow story by Shipwrecked Comedy. It is a fun mystery updated telling of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. It's hilarious. All the actors are amazing. The writing is phenomenal, and I was lucky enough to help out in the art department on that shoot, and I can also tell you, not only was everyone great on screen, they were also really lovely off camera. So
yay!
Go check it out. Go give reviews. It's 10 episodes. If you binge it all, it's like 2.5 hours. So basically, it's like a movie.
Perfect.
We'd
love to see it.
Go check it out.
In terms of me, you can follow me at What the Fleep on all social media, Brazil Dragon Pod for the podcast stuff. Thanks to Freddie Luna for our awesome new logo. If you are seeing that, you can follow his stuff at Stuck on You Cartoons. If you're interested, he takes commissions. But in terms of what we have going on here, we're going to keep the Scooby-Doo chain chugging along. Also, still banking some episodes from Media Made Me. Hopefully, that project will finalize soon, and you'll get to hear some amazing interviews. Recently was on One Indescribable Podcast, talking about Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist Season 1 finale. And coming up soon, I will be on Shit 90 Shows Taught Me. I will hold off on what I am talking about there, but I'm super excited to reunite with Jessica and Sarah for some shenanigans. Otherwise, you can follow me on all social media. I'm going to start trying to build a Twitch and a Discord stuff up we'll see how that goes. Brazilian Dragon there on Twitch. Otherwise, in terms of my pop culture plugs, also in terms of social media, Instagram is where it's at. That's where I promote my comedy shows if you're in the Los Angeles area. And pop culture plug. I have been watching Gossip Girl because I'm going to be on a Gossip Girl podcast shortly. And it can be messy, and it's surprisingly better than I expected. So, Gossip Girl, the original one. I haven't seen the sequel, but Matt knows some of the characters and cast members on the sequel or the reboot, or knows of them at least.
Yes, XOXO.
Gossip Girl. Well, with all that said, next time we will be talking about Scooby-Doo Big Top Scoob, I think is what it's called. Just pull it up. Oh no, why am I stupid and close the document? Whatever. We'll figure it out what it's next time. You'll see it when you look at the link. With all that said, thank you so much for joining us on this adventure. We're going to hop back into the mystery machine, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.